Testing 1, 2, testing. Hey, this is NutBallCop. Good evening. Wanted to get on earlier, but this was sort of a special day. It's my 37th and a half anniversary, so I went out to dinner. We got married in a small ceremony out west, and then we did another one with the family back east, so we're technically married twice. So went out to dinner, had a couple of vodkas, lemon drop, a blueberry lemon drop, and then another lemon drop. So I'm calling tonight's broadcast Vodka Thoughts. Okay. Big topic I want to get into because there's a lot of meat and potatoes in the problem that they're about to create. That's even worse than the problem they've created already with ICE, the federal law enforcement agency that's gone completely amok. To call it an American law enforcement agency is no longer valid at this point. They are the Stasi of East Germany. And you'll hear me talk a lot about East Germany if you listen and read to me, because I know about that. The ICE budget was ridiculously increased. It is now one of the most biggest funded law enforcement agencies in the world. It has a larger budget than the FBI. It has a larger budget than the Israeli military. It has a larger budget than a couple of our allies in Europe for security and defense. The spending is absurd, especially when they're creating $4 trillion in debt and they want to go on a hiring spree that is just going to blow up in their face. And I'm not saying that this is a guess or this is sort of like, an empty projection. It's not. There's historical evidence that shows hiring sprees in law enforcement never work. They don't work in the paramilitary, police, security, Coast Guard, that sort of stuff. And they definitely don't work in the military. Hiring sprees do not work. How do we know that? Because we went through a hiring spree back in the early aughts. I think it was about 2004 is when it started. And they went through and they hired willy-nilly a massive increase in Border Patrol agents. Well, they obviously didn't screen people the way they should have been screened. They obviously didn't do psychological tests. They obviously didn't do criminal background checks and financial checks. I had a super, super high clearance in the military. And I went through several police agency background checks, which were personal investigations that lasted months. Okay. I had no problem going through that. The only thing I don't like is the polygraph, because I used to be a polygraph interrogator with the polygrapher and Army CID, and I understood what the polygraph machine was. It's just a tool. It is not a truth-telling device. It's just an interrogation tool. That's all it is. Okay. Anybody tells you anything different has never actually done a preliminary questioning and an interview session prior to the polygraph examination, and has never done a follow-up interrogation after the polygraph, after you saw the guy was pretty lying. It's not like the polygraph doesn't show people shows people lying through their autonomic reactions in their body. It's not reliable enough to tell truth or guilt. It's just one arrow in the quiver. That's all it is. Okay. So yeah, when I got hired, they went through my checking account. They went through my credit score. They went through my mortgage. They went through everything in my finance. They went everything through my family, including talking to my parents, my in-laws, military clearance. They even talked to people I went to high school with. Talked to my vice principal. That sounds onerous and kind of like, wow, that's a lot of work to just go ahead and just do the investigative side to hiring for an agency. And yeah, it is. It's a lot of work. Like, The department I eventually got hired onto in civilian life, they had lieutenants do the entry investigations, and that was nearly a full-time job, just doing background checks and taking care of the investigations of the new hires. Okay, and that's the way it's supposed to be. I have no problem with what I had to go through to get the jobs I did. No problem whatsoever. Okay, because I want to make sure that we have a reasonable, conclusive evidence that shows the person I'm going to be working with isn't a crook or a psychopath or a serial killer or a gang member or a rapist. Okay. What happened when they did that mass hiring in the early aughts with the Border Patrol? You got the worst of the worst that got Border Patrol badges. It wasn't just, line of duty misconduct. It was felonious criminal activity, and lots of it. Um, you got to be really careful when you hire for these type of jobs, whether it's paramilitary or military. The background checks and the screening is 100% required. It needs to be tough, 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 tough. Back in my day, like every exam I took, people who made it past the physical in the first panel interview, that was only maybe 2% of the people who applied. Okay. Um, when you do these hiring binges, no, you're hiring a lot more than 2%. And that's where the problems start. Okay. A lot of people have this idea they can be in the military and the paramilitary, but the fact is they can't. Like, I've seen people fail a physical test, the preliminary, field test, run 500 meters, jump over a wall, do an obstacle course, run the pylons like the football practice fields, pick up the dummy, move the dummy 20 meters, pick it up, put it over a barrier, um, you know, hit the hit the tag at the end, and that's the end of your time. I flew through the course. I had already been in great physical shape from being in the Army. I maxed my PT tests almost every single time in the 6 years I was in the Army. In fact, when I got into a new CID office, they like one of the first weeks there, they said, "Oh, we got to do our PT test," and I was like, "Hey man, I just did mine in my unit." Like, well, you didn't do it here, so you have to do it again. I'm like, I don't care. I work out every day. I can do a PT test. I can do two in a day. It doesn't bother me. So I went out and I did my massive amount of push-ups and sit-ups, and I ran the mile like in a mile and a half in like 10:38 or something like that. I brought my score sheet that my sergeant signed back to my chief warrant officer, and he's like, "Is this really your score?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in like super good shape." And then finally, my buddy, who was my sergeant, was like telling him off to the side. It's like, "Yeah, I would not get into a fight with this guy. He's in super good shape." And yeah, that's his real PT scores. So yeah, when I did the civilian test, in a couple of departments and one state police agency back east, um, yeah, I flew through them. But like I said, 98% of the people did not. Um, and that's part of the weeding out process that has to happen. Okay. Like we had a guy that was probably 85 pounds overweight and all in a beer belly. He tried to do the physical course and was doing so horribly, the lieutenant stopped him and told him they didn't want him to hurt himself. Okay. Um, when you're in a hiring spree and you're trying to meet a political goal, not a law enforcement goal, or you're trying to meet an ideology, not the practice of law enforcement, not the administration of justice, you're going to let that fat bastard come through the training cycle and get into the hiring queue, even though he's totally not qualified physically to be a cop. Okay. So yeah, I have no problem with the financial reviews and the investigations. I have no problem with the background checks, any level. Um, it's the way it needs to be done. And we need to have a system where only 2 out of 100 people get through. You don't want iffy people wearing a badge. Okay. The only three of us that made us out of 460 was my buddy who came from Cincinnati. So he was a lateral. All he had to do was come learn the California laws, but he already had an equivalent license, so he could basically certify in California very easily after he did a short set of classes just on the California laws that were different from where he came from in Ohio. And then my buddy who came out of the Navy and me who came out of the Army. That's the only people who made it past the first day. And we were rooting for an Air Force gal that showed up. She was a sergeant in the Air Force. We were talking to her before they started the queue people up for the physical test, and it was like, "Oh, you're Air Force. Oh, you're an NCO. Oh, that's really good. That really qualifies you." And she was in super good physical shape. You could see her arms. I'm like, "Man, you work out. You're in good shape." And she hit the PT test. Man, she flew to the PT test. She was like all the other military. She's completely aced the test, right? She shows up to the oral interview still in her sweatsuits from the PT test. She doesn't put on a business dress or a suit and come to the interview. We all rented hotel rooms or went back home, took a shower, got on our suits, and came back for the interviews 3 hours later in suits. She showed up in her sweats. And we were like, "You're ex-military. You should know better." Okay. Um, that was sad because, first contact, she seemed to have her stuff together. I liked her. Good physical shape, military experience. Go, man, you may be a good candidate for here. This is great. And yeah, we need more women in law enforcement. We thought that back in the 80s and 90s. I worked with women in CID. I worked with undercover investigators in CID, and that was the 80s. Okay. So I'm always been pro women in law enforcement. We need them. 100%. No absolute doubt. Anybody tells you don't need women in law enforcement is a moron. Okay. So I was rooting for her. But yeah, when she showed up in sweats, I'm like, man, that was dumb. That was just not thinking. That was not using your military mind. So yeah. Oh, the other example I have is the Border Patrol in the early aughts. That was one of the hiring sprees that went totally wrong. Remember Iraq when they started running out of recruits and then they lowered the standards and things went wrong there. But then the big thing, the massive crime wave with badges. Remember the Miami River cops? Those were all cops who got hired by Miami in the early 90s after the big shootout at the Miami Mall, the official beginning of the armed drug war in America's zeitgeist public mind. They hired anybody. They gave anybody a badge who they thought had a heartbeat that could go to the academy. It's not like they weren't washing out some people, but their numbers to getting through training and FDO were way too high. Okay, and it ended up being a problem. The River Cops were a gang within Miami Police Department, Miami Metro-Dade Police, and they had become a full-blown violent street gang. And they were killing the drug dealers and ripping off the drugs and money and reselling the drugs and buying guns and being a gang, being totally 100% a gang within a police department. Okay. That's what the mass hiring in Miami got you in the 90s. So how do you think it's going to be any different when they start hiring now willy-nilly for ICE agents? How do you think this is going to work? Even though we have the experience of the Border Patrol problems in the early aughts, the Miami River cops, the Iraq low recruitment period. There's a lot of examples that says do not attempt to mass hire through lower standards because that's the only way you can mass hire is lowering the standards. Like I said, back in my day, 2 or 3 out of 100 made it through. Okay. The first couple of stages. Like when I applied for Connecticut State Police, 1,400 people took the test. I think 600 took the physical. And at the end of it, I was number 11 and they were hiring 136. Yeah. So out of the 1,400 that applied, by the time the physical got done, this is before the background check started and the finance review started. Okay. They were already down to 136 candidates out of 1,400. Okay. That's a massive cutout of candidates. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying that's a good thing. Okay. It's like with my father-in-law, the command sergeant major, retired Green Beret. Like he's talking about how tough it was, to get through Green Beret school for 18 months. The big, what is it called? Was it the Q course? I think it's called. I wasn't a Green Beret. I was a cop in the Army. He was a Green Beret. He's quite a badass and a real hero, by the way. Um, he was talking about how many people washed out, like how many people washed out of Ranger school. Like he was already a Green Beret in Vietnam, working with a Ranger element. They kept giving him shit about being not being a Ranger. So he told the colonel to send him to Ranger school. So he went to Ranger school at 31 years old and was number one in his course. He's, yeah, super hardcore. But he was telling me, like, yeah, so many people drop out. And he goes, sometimes some schools, you literally get one or two guys out of 2,500 who did the first PT test, first physical test. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, that's the standard. That's how it's worked out historically. That's how you select the best people. That's how you run into the least amount of problems later. So this whole nationalist movement to create a Stasi force of immense proportions. Okay, and if you don't know who the Stasi is, oh, please, please, please go to Wikipedia. Please, please, please go to like Berlin University. They have a whole English page about explaining who the Stasi were. Okay, this ICE force that's going to be bigger than the FBI or the Israeli military. Okay, these aren't cops. Okay, even with the problems we're having and we've had in law enforcement in different periods of times. Okay, in our history, American cops should be a thing. Okay, what they're promoting with ICE isn't cops. This is the Stasi. They are going to do the political bidding of the state. And what I mean about the state is for Dear Leader Pornstar Humper, because he has declared himself the state already. I wrote an essay months ago. What are y'all going to do? All y'all, what are you going to do when Dear Leader goes full Idi Amin? You know what Idi Amin did? I wrote this in the essay. He deported all the Asians and ruined his economy. Sound familiar? He created a state police force to guard him and guard his reign. Does that sound familiar? It should. Okay. This ICE hiring crap, this is nothing else but building an East German Stasi force. Okay. This is also why, this is another recent essay I did, this is why the East German grocery stores in New York are not going to work the way you think they're going to work. Why don't you try some American ideas, not East German ideas? Christ. What else I got on my notepad here? And we're going to have a nationalist Stasi police force, and we're also going to have nationalist state TV. Stephen Colbert has been fired. Jon Stewart, according to several reports, will be fired. All network TV will not criticize Dear Leader Pornstar Humper and his relationship with Epstein and Epstein Island and his felony convictions for business fraud. You will not bring those things up on state TV anymore. Why? Because the American Stasi is here now. You didn't put anything on the air in East Germany unless the Stasi approved it. You didn't make any products in East Germany unless the Stasi approved it. Even the Stasi in the 80s, when the entire tech market was being, launched and exploding into what we see it today, all East Germany did was steal Texas Instruments and Siemens chips, erase the information off the back of the chips so their engineers couldn't see what the hell they were working for, and they very shittily try to reverse hack chips. That was the Stasi managing their computer industry. It was the worst computer industry on planet Earth. Why? Because it was all state-controlled bullshit ran by the Stasi. All this shit you're hearing on the news, we need a militarized police force with their faces hidden, no identification. We need a hidden secret police force 10 times the size it is now. And we're not allowing Stephen Colbert to speak on network TV. Why? The Stasi doesn't like it. Oh, and I told you, like in my old blog page over at Facebook, my Groovy Libertarian for President page that I ran for 12, 13 years. I warned you about the damn police tanks. I go, the police tanks will open up the door for them to do anything they want for militarization on U.S. soil. Once the tanks are on the ground, you're fucked. They won't stop at anything after they know you'll accept armored mobile sniper positions rolling through your neighborhood. Because that's all these tanks are. How can I get in an armored car with a military sniper rifle, an M14 KS? I have a Freedom of Information Act request on my desk with the serial numbers. 6 M14 KS is in their hands before the tank was delivered. Their message to the public: we're outgunned. I'm ex-military. I've fired an M14 before. Nobody is outgunned with an M14 in their hands. If you have an M14 in your hands and you think you're outgunned, you're just a coward. So they lied. They got the police tanks in the street. Now they want a door-to-door nationwide Stasi police force, and they don't want anybody talking about it on network TV. Do you see where we're heading? Oh, and they canceled Bert and Ernie today because I guess Bert and Ernie are illegal immigrants stealing our Social Security and Medicare. They're puppets, you fucking morons. They're puppets who teach children. I grew up on Sesame Street. I grew up on the Electric Company. I grew up on Zoom. I grew up on the Muppets. In fact, I still own all the Muppets on DVD. I watched it during the pandemic, every episode. This is what you do when you've been locked down for 22 months because you have a pre-existing condition and you can't get sick. I got sick once with COVID and it nearly killed me. If it wasn't for the Pax pills, I'd have been in trouble. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I watched all the Muppets. I mean, if you're telling me that Bert and Ernie and Count Dracula are your enemies, you're a moronic tool. You are so stupid. I don't know what to do with you. You want to fund a door-to-door Stasi force by blaming Bert and Ernie. Whatever, dudes. But this is what happens when you start becoming a cult member. You'll fucking believe anything. Okay, you will literally. I have said this before, and I wrote this before. These idiots in the MAGA cult will literally look at the blue sky, and as long as their leader says it's orange with gold polka dots, they'll look up at the blue sky and go, "Wow, it's orange with gold polka dots." Yes, they'll lie to themselves. That's what cult members do. This is the Moonies, except it's the political party. Okay, and I'm really hoping it doesn't turn into Heaven's Gate, another cult. Great web designers, bad overall philosophy. That's what I'm saying. Um. Oh, and did you see the Epstein files? Nobody can stop talking about it. Neither can I. Wall Street Journal just published a salacious body, degenerate level birthday letter, birthday card, whatever it was, between dear leader porn star Humper and the island rapist, the island pedophilia rapist. Yeah, it's weird. Okay, I'm not a prude, so if you have a salacious thing like, oh, grab your pearls, no. But I'm saying, given the two personalities, something's up. Okay, now there's a big story that's been floating around, and I can't verify it myself, but allegedly the Miami Herald has a big dump of data. Now, to protect themselves, what the newspapers have been doing recently is once they get a big chunk they know the government will be pissed about, they immediately share it with a dozen others. This way they have to come after all of them. This is the smart move the papers made when the Supreme Court decision came down in the Watergate about releasing the Pentagon Papers. Okay. Why that was so fucking important? It's the scene in The Post with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks. When Tom Hanks comes in the morning, he's got the paper shopping bag, and it's full of newspapers. He runs into Meryl Streep's office, Kathleen's office, and he just starts whipping down the newspapers. Christian Science Monitor, Atlantic Constitution Journal, Detroit Free Press, the Sacramento Bee, the Boston Globe. Everybody printed the story about the Pentagon Papers. Everybody did it. So that was an exercise in the free press in the First Amendment. And they won. Well, guess who just printed the birthday salacious letter? The Wall Street Journal. They're already claiming, the Wall Street, the administration and dear leader himself are already claiming that the Wall Street Journal is fake news. The Wall Street Journal is fake news? Okay, that's shifting the Overton window a lot further over than I thought was possible. It's fake news, it's woke, it's printing Antifa disinformation because they got a letter with Donald Trump's signature on it. Fake news. Fake news. Anything I don't like is fake news. I don't like Colbert, so he can't be on network TV. It's not a financial decision. Don't let them pull that bullshit. Okay? They're taking Colbert off the air for censorship reasons. Hands down, all these big law firms that surrendered to Dear Leader, all these networks and newspapers and magazines are surrendering to him. I mean, the payouts are bullshit. The payouts aren't payouts, they're shakedowns. And that's how he's run his entire life as a business fraudster. He is a master of the shakedown. And he just shook down ABC. He shook down all these other news outlets and networks. And now they're going to do his bidding, just like the big law firm said. They will now be personal lawyers, not to the White House, but personal lawyers to the wannabe dictator, dear leader, porn star humper. They are his personal lawyers, and they will go to promote his agenda. That's the duty of a private law firm? I didn't know that. I didn't know that. They are going to lash out. Just beware of that. They are going to lash out at everybody and everything. But like the stupid move he pulled in Texas the other day, dear leader sitting next to Abbott. Remember, we used to wait for gaffes, things they said when they didn't think the microphone was on. He said it in the middle of a fucking press conference with people looking at him. He didn't give a fuck. He just looked at Abbott and goes, change your district so we can maintain power. See Guile. Okay, wow, that was very straightforward. Seize power in Texas so I can stay president. That's like, let's start a war with China because I lost an election. Yeah, that happened. So they're going to lash out, and they're going to lash out repeatedly. But I think they're losing energy. Like, they had to admit something today that he is not. Remember the whole lie about his weight? Dear leader kept saying he had the body of an NHL hockey player. Like, long time ago, deep in my notes, I put a Czech player who was exactly the height and weight that dear leader claims to be, or his doctors claim he is. Okay. Look at the body types between that hockey player and his potato sack ass, now with swollen feet and ankles. What is that called? Edema? Whatever it is, man, his ankles are as big as his fucking feet right now. So all of a sudden, he's not as fit as a 25-year-old NHL professional ice hockey player. Now he has medical problems and he had to be treated. Well, that goes against your narrative, doesn't it? Because you try to sell us that he was the reincarnation of Thor. Not so true now, huh? They're putting makeup on his hands. Did you see those pictures? Caked makeup, like foundation makeup to cover up the splotches and the bruising that his obviously not fit as a 26-year-old, 25-year-old hockey player. Um, you know, he's overweight. He has a bad diet. He looks like hell. He's going bald. He has skin complexion of Nosferatu. I mean, look when the wind blows up his hair. I know I have long hair too in the back, but my skin color or anything, my hair is not that different from my face. I'm pretty light skinned all the way around. He's got, I mean, his makeup is so dark now, it looks like a cat shat on his face. And then this is underneath his hair is just all pure white next to his uninjured ear, by the way. I did notice that. I did notice how Elon Musk threw the photographer off of Twitter after he pointed out, hey, here's a picture of his ear a couple of days later. Doesn't it have any marks on it? And he got banned from social media for it. So there's that too. So his whole narrative, how he's a superhero and he's the fittest guy, because the whole fitness thing as an old potato sack looking man, he's trying to be Putin, who's actually for his age in pretty decent shape, but it's not his shape why he's so popular in Russia. Putin is popular because he's simply still breathing. Okay. Males don't make it that old in Russia. They haven't, especially after the Berlin Wall came down. Shit, men were drinking themselves to death. The leading cause of death in men were Russia was vodka. Okay. If you're his age and you're still around, you're a catch in Russia. Okay. There are a lot of old, lonely Russian women because all the old Russian men are already in the ground. Okay. So he kind of hijacked that part of his fake persona. Um, you know, I was waiting for him to go get ride on a horse shirtless. I was just waiting for Dear Leader to do that. And look at that stupid. I'm sure they would Photoshop the picture and take his gut out and stuff like that. And his swollen ankles. But the whole facade is crumbling. It's starting to come apart, and that's a really good thing because that's what we call a chink in the armor. Okay. Like I said the other day, man, it's like that Joseph McCarthy hearing, the McCarthyism error that was just a bastardization of the truth. Finally, somebody wouldn't be bullied in a hearing, just looked at McCarthy and said, do you not have any shame, sir? And the whole country went, oh, yeah, he's just being a fucking loud bitch. He isn't proving shit. This is like the first Trump administration. Remember the nativist from Kansas? What the hell's his name? Chris Korbach has this big plan to take care of all the dirty deployables who aren't Americans. And he's going in. I got the plan right here. It's in my folder. Photographer with a zoom lens. Click, 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 click. The manila folder was empty. There was no plan. They just sold, and this is something that like the Red Hat rubes. They're at least some of them. Some of them will go to their grave thinking that Dear Leader Porn Star Humper is their Jesus. I know that. You know that. Okay. At least some people are going, what the fuck is going on? You said that you would release the JFK files. You lied. You said you would release the Epstein files. What you did was create a binder with stuff that's already been released to the newspapers 3 years before that and a bunch of redacted pages. And you had a bunch of right-wing lunatics stand outside the Oval Office underneath the awning waving the three-ring binders that contained absolutely nothing new. Nothing. And all the usual right-wing shitheads were there. Okay. He didn't show you, he didn't reveal, he didn't tell you the truth. He didn't find an outcome. He didn't find a solution. And this is what's starting to worry me because if you give any care to the future of our country, and I mean the future of the country, I mean our children and our grandchildren and the next generations after that, if you give a shit about anything, you'll start to wake up and you'll help your friends and your family start to wake up that you've been conned. Okay. We can't have arts, education, healthcare, and retirement but you can have a tax break that's going to cost $4 trillion on top of the $8 trillion in debt. That's $12 trillion in debt just from dear leaders' two administrations. Okay? That's a third of the debt in 5 years. His first term, and we're not even through the first year. And we've already booked on the record, we're spending it $12 trillion. And what is the result of spending this $12 trillion? The billionaires are getting richer. Average working Americans are going broke. They're losing their health care. They're losing their opportunity. They're losing their educational opportunities. They're losing their ability to retire. Now they're literally telling you on these right-wing podcasts that you don't have a right to retire. You should work until you go to the grave. That's Ben Shapiro. Jewish Nazi cunt. No, the rich get to live a lavish lifestyle. They all want to be little Ceausescus. If you don't know the story in Romania, when that was a dictatorship, okay, it was run by a husband and wife, the Ceausescus. They were psychopaths. The country spent their entire reign on food rationings. There was starvation. They lived in the lap of luxury. Okay. Where do you think this is going? Red Hatters. A dog eat dog society where only the very wealthiest get healthcare, education, and a retirement. Everybody else is Somali or Bangladeshi poor in America. And that's been the myth my whole adult life. Everybody's saying, oh, the poor all live overseas. You've never been to Appalachia, have you? You've never been down to the labor camps in California. There's third world poverty in the first world, and that first world is America, and it's always been here. They're going to make it a billion times worse. Because not only are they going to make you poor, take away your education, take away your healthcare, and take away your retirement, they're going to sick the Stasi law enforcement brigade against you. Why? You have an opinion. It's not because you're Mexican. It's not because you're Iranian, because they're now arresting every Iranian they can get their hands on, including green card holders who are married to U.S. citizens. Okay, they just arrested a whole bunch of people in Los Angeles and a couple of guys up in Beaverton, Oregon. Okay, these aren't the criminals who are here illegally. Okay, he's here legally. He has not committed a crime, according to two different reports I just read before I started this broadcast. Okay, so what the hell are we doing other than creating a racist Stasi police force to enforce the dictator's will? This has nothing to do with law enforcement. This has nothing to do with the administration of justice. When you're here on an expired visa, that's a tort, not a felony. You're not even enforcing the laws that are on the books. You're making up your own law because you have a bunch of mass Stasi cops running around thinking that you're going to solve all crime by deporting Jorge and Juan out of the artichoke field in Watsonville, California. If you think deporting the farm labor is going to cause crime to go down to zero, you're so fucking stupid. How do you even wipe your own ass? And how the fuck are you planning on getting food? How much do you garden? I love gardening. I have fruit trees, vegetables, herbs. I got a whole bunch of stuff gardening around here. Okay, I love it. Okay. Rosy graded needlepoint. I do gardening. Okay. How many of you are into that? How many can grow enough food to make sure you get your nutrients? How many times are you willing to go to the supermarket to see empty shelves because they arrested the farm labor and the food isn't available? And not to mention, like I did the other day, where do you think they're going to go with this? You think they're going to? You think they're going to let the chicken processing plants in the fields just remain empty? They're going to allow food to go off the shelves? When they arrest everybody at the beef slaughterhouse, they're just going to close the slaughterhouse and there's going to be no Big Macs for dear leader Pornstar Humper? Bull Shit. Somebody's going to be working that field. Some of those people may be named Nick Fuentes. Maybe some white boy who just got laid off from an oil rig or just got laid off from the federal government. Somebody is going into those fields to work. Somebody is going to go into that chicken plant. Someone's going to go into that beef slaughterhouse. When it isn't the Somalis, the Haitians, the Mexicans, the El Salvadorians, it's going to be somebody else. And it ain't going to be the billionaires in Trump's cabinet. Get it? You got some dumb white boy flying a Trump flag off the back of his pick-em-up truck? Ask him how good he is at picking lettuce. How fast, how many chickens can he part in an hour? There's a quota. I'm really glad we have Substack and Blue Sky because most of the other social media platforms went to the dark side. I won't even buy a VR headset if it requires a Facebook or something else like that login. And I want a VR headset. I'm a technology geek. I'm a senior technologist. I love technology. I want a VR headset. I'm not buying one from Zuckerberg. Fuck off. Okay. I deleted my X account, my Twitter account, never going back. Why? It's low IQ, small dicked, closeted Nazis crying out their grievances with a truth factor of about, I don't know, 1 out of 100,000. Look at all the shit they've blamed. And they think they got permission to blame people because the loudmouth was president. The loudmouth racist was president. So that gave me permission to be a loudmouth racist and all the shit they say. But then they don't acknowledge and they turn that blind eye. They put on those horse blinders. When you bring up, that guy Zachary from CPAC with a little guitar playing, saying how he sang that song, how much he loved Dear Leader. I love Dear Leader. I love him so much. I'll kill all the Jews and all the black people too. Yeah, he was so happy with his guitar, and he's the star of CPAC. Gets home from CPAC, gets arrested for sexual torture of a minor. Oh, the guy that runs CPAC, according to 4 or 5 articles I read when it just after it happened, got caught up feeling up another twink, a married white right-wing male Christian, feeling up young gay men. That's his hobby, according to numerous reports. And one guy on Substack says they got a copy of the bar's security camera video, and it wasn't just a rub up or a quick touch. This was a how would Dear Leader said it? He would grab him by the pussy if he had a pussy, according to reports. I'm not verifying them. You can go read the Substacks and the other articles about that. But yeah, these are degenerates and perverts telling us they're the better people. And you and I are shit. Trip the sensor light. Yeah, you and I are total shit. I wrote that article a while ago, and it still bugs me. Every time I see the news, like, how the hell do you hate my family? Why does the federal government now hate my family? I'm ex-military. I'm ex-police. I've started my own businesses. I joined startup companies. I helped grow the economy. I've hired my friends and family to do work. Okay. I've literally created jobs. Okay. You hate me because I'm not a right-wing lunatic. You hate me because I'm an atheist. Okay. I just believe in good and evil is something that's within man's heart and soul. Okay. It's not a demon down there and a magical sky daddy up there. That's childish. Okay. I know what good and bad is. Okay. My parents raised me right. My grandparents raised me right. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up. So I don't know why they think the average working American is their enemy, but this is what they holistically believe. And my final thought tonight is, once again, I will warn you, if you think they're going to stop at the brown field worker or the black sugarcane worker, you're an idiot. They're already taking political hostages. They will take anybody out for any reason to not to perform law enforcement. Law enforcement is the last thing they're looking for here. What they want is fear and a projection of power on U.S. soil that you do not have a right to resist or criticize any measure that they desire to take. Okay, look at this Beauvais as judge today. The Republicans just threw the parliamentary rules out the window. Just voted Beauvais in. There you go. He's in. No debate. There's a set of rules. They could have totally done it, and they would have won the vote anyway. Now they're not even pretending they're going to follow process or parliamentary rules. No, hearing's over. Everybody in favor say aye, aye. He's in. Done. Oh, look, 90 seconds. We're done. Let's go appoint somebody else. What about the debate and the deliberation, which is actually Congress's job? The legislative branch is all about deliberation. What about deliberation? None. There will be no dissent on the nationalist plan. It's true in Congress. It's now true on network TV. And it's very soon going to be true in federal law enforcement. You don't enforce the law. You enforce the grievance of a dictator. And that's where it all goes south. But I'm not saying we're out of the woods, but I'm also saying we're not totally screwed yet. Because one of the things that could happen is they could take things a little too far, even for the people who are willing to be their little racist locally for them, to be their little meanie for them. When they realize that those policies are going to affect them, and they're the ones that are looking at poverty, they're the ones looking where their kids have no opportunity. So at least some of those people are going to wake up. It's like that Air Force mom. She did, I think, like 21 years in the Air Force, got out like a E7, good career. Hasn't enlisted, of course. And she was sitting in her car doing one of those card videos while she was sitting in the park waiting for her kids. And she just says, everything they told me when I grew up, you go and you go to college, you join the military, you learn a skill, you get educated, you go find a great job, you work hard, you get the American dream. And she goes, that's not true anymore. It's not true for me. It's not true for my kids. She has kids that are adults and they're still living with her because the rents are too damn high. Why are rents too damn high? Because private equity and corporations are buying up housing left and right. You bailed out the banks. That didn't make housing cheaper. Okay. Hey, my adult son still live with me, and I told him to live with me. Why go out and pay, $2,200 a month for a shitty apartment? Or literally pay $1,000 for one bedroom in a house living with 6 other people. I have a big giant house. You have big bedrooms. Just camp out. Eventually, hopefully this will turn for the better. But it's not with these clowns in charge. So don't back off. Again, don't take your foot off the gas pedal. Hell, I got into it in the bar again the other day. Telling the guy how wrong he was. Like, if you're Russian, speaking for the motherland, you're doing a great job. Other than that, shut the fuck up. Okay? If Taylor Swift is your fucking problem, or Stephen Colbert, you're a fucking idiot. And all these things in the end with these nationalists, they're just excuses to fleece the entire country. But now you have a guy who realizes as long as he's in power, there's no chance that he or anybody around him will go to jail or be held responsible for anything they do wrong. And that's the way he's lived his whole life. So seizing control in a rolling coup in America, if that keeps him in his lifestyle he wants, He's willing to do it. He's willing to destroy an open society. And he's willing to run the economy and the dollar into the ground. So every time someone comes up with something stupid, point out how stupid it is with facts. Okay. Immigrants don't take all the Social Security. That's ridiculous. Okay. They aren't taking up all the education slots at universities. That's ridiculous. The foreigners who do take up the slots are coming from rich overseas families who are paying top dollar tuition to be at top universities. Okay. Poor Mexicans or poor Guatemalans or poor Venezuelans are not taking up all the school seats from your white kid. That's ridiculous. But they'll tell you anything. They'll sell you anything. But just every time they bring it up, explain how wrong they are, because they ain't right about much. Okay? And start asking them, do you really want to live in a society that looks more like East Germany behind the Iron Curtain than it does America? And when they say yes, ask them how serious they are. And then show them the videos of the right-wing boys that have gone to Moscow, and then realize what a shithole Moscow is. And what a totalitarian police corrupt shit show it is. It's a police state run by gang members. That should sound familiar. Anyways, y'all have a good night. Until next time, think about it.